Mama Watali presents Community Conversation, part of the Strong Women, Strong Men series. It will explore how to keep the dialogue on gender-based violence, intimate partner violence across the different age demographics. Mama Watali is an Ottawa-based non-profit organization with an international reach.
Mama Watali means in the absence of a mother, and it comes from the Bantu language of Luganda. And it was born after my mom passed away. Now, the organization is really at the core to serve Black women that have suffered personal loss, whether it is through loss of a loved one, but most especially because of domestic or what is sometimes referred to as intimate partner violence. When women go through violence of any kind, women just need somewhere to turn and talk to somebody, either in search of resources or just somebody to listen and validate what they're going through as they try to recover and rebuild their lives.
Mama Watali was founded to support survivors of gender-based violence and to create awareness of the challenges women continue to face.
We are doing advocacy work at all levels of government, from municipal, provincial, to national level, because women's rights essentially are human rights. And at the core of the human rights is the equality of both men and women.
Founded by Susan Namulindwa, Mama Watali has successfully undertaken several projects nationally and internationally, including the creation of a library in Uganda.
When I was a little girl, I loved to read. I remember being in a boarding school and splitting novels with my friends so that we could read. So I used this opportunity of being in Ottawa to collect books from my children's school boards, and with the help of lottery and volunteers, we transported those books to Luero and set up a community library. We were able to distribute books to neighboring schools so that they could use them to elevate the education in the area. We have also done community microcredits for women in Luero still and in Uganda in general. And we also were able to get school fees for girls. These are girls that will be high achievers for secondary school who would not have gone to school otherwise. So those are some of the things we have done in the past. Right now, our target market is right here in Canada mostly. Black women, new immigrant women that have been affected by domestic violence, intimate partner violence, or any kind of loss. So we are setting up community support circles. So we are encouraging women to get in touch and find just some either professional help or women that have also gone through what you're going through to support you. Sometimes it's just a shoulder to lean on, or somebody to say, you know what, I've made it. If I made it, you can make it. So we are really trying not to talk about being victims. We are talking about overcoming.
The vision of Mama Watali is to give voice to the lives of Black women in all its dimensions.
Well, most of us have seen or witnessed a situation that we know is wrong. We know somebody who is going through some kind of abuse, some woman who needs intervention, but sometimes we don't know how to do it. So we want to put volunteer resources together so that people know how they can help in a way that is helpful for the family and helpful for the woman or the women that are going through it, so they can move forward with their children. We are putting together resources for parenting. How do you parent? How do we parent boys and girls to make sure that the boys know that they don't have to be abusive? This is not a power struggle, that they can have healthy relationships. We need to emphasize the fact that when a girl or a woman says no, that no means no. And there is no reason why as a society or as a community we should turn around and blame the victims after they have been abused. So currently we are holding a series of conversations. So these are weekly conversations around issues that affect women. I want to call strong men out there, strong women out there, but especially strong men. This work is not about women versus men. We need to hear the male voices. There is a lot of good, strong men out there that fight day and night for their families, that go out every day to protect their families. We need to hear your voices. We need to hear you add your voices to this work because, the family is the core foundation of our community. So if we have broken families, we are going to have a broken community. So a family is the nucleus of the community. So if we build strong families, we will build a strong community. Jump in and let us do this work together.
Thank you so much for joining us today and attending Mama Watali's community conversation event. My name is Caroline Allman, and I'll be your moderator today for this conversation. Just to give you a little bit about myself, I currently work at Carleton University in the co-op office, working alongside my team to help to administrate the co-op program for the entire university. In my free time, I love volunteering within my community, just supporting various initiatives, whether it's Mama Watali, which we're all here today to hear about, and I'm also on the board of the Afro-Canadian Chamber of Commerce, which helps to support Black businesses in the Ottawa community. So again, I just want to welcome everyone. For those of you who have been with us before, welcome back to our Strong Women, Strong Men series. I also want to welcome those of you who it's your first time here today with us. I hope that you feel comfortable to share in the chat, to be able to share in your thoughts and feelings about these topics, which are so important. And that's why we're here today. Over the past 6 weeks, we've had conversations with academics, psychologists, social workers, counselors, shelter workers, faith-based clergy, all to deconstruct the roots of violence. And so to start off our event today, I would just like to pass it over to Talisa Singh McKay to do the land acknowledgement for us.
We gather this afternoon on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe Nations. We acknowledge that they lived here before us and keep living here now. Reconnaître le terrain sur lequel nous vivons est une invitation pour nous à reconnaître l'histoire de la terre, des gens et de la connectivité pour donner un sens à ces connexions. By learning where we live, we honor the cultures and practices of the people of this land and continue to be aware of and participate in the healing process of colonization and intergenerational trauma. As a woman born in this country to immigrant parents, myself and my family are Gats. Je vous appelle à reconnaître que vous êtes également des invités et des gardiens aussi. As an organization that advocates for support of Black women and families who experience personal loss, all forms of intimate and gender violence and harassment through a historically patriarchal and racist system, we recognize the mirrored hardships faced by Indigenous people. Nous reconnaissons comme des personnes de couleur également opprimées que les ancêtres des peuples autochtones ont été dépossédés, se sont fait arracher leurs enfants et leur culture a été dépouillée, que les esprits de votre peuple apportent la force d'avancer tout au long du chemin vers l'émancipation. May the spirits of your people bring forth the strength to move forward throughout the journey to emancipation. The patriarchal systems in place have damaged all of us, our families, friends, and our personal environments. Nous nous voyons à travers les yeux, nous nous embrassons et nous agissons. Nous ne sommes pas des spectateurs. We are not bystanders. As we celebrate the UN Decade for people of African descent, let us remember our ancestors, those who were enslaved, the mothers and their children who were raped and continued to be sold into slavery. May their spirits give us strength to uplift our voices as we continue the journey to freedom and equity. Alors que nous célébrons la décennie des Nations Unies pour des personnes d'ascendance africaine. Souvenons-nous de notre ancêtre, de ceux qui ont été réduits en esclavage, des mères et de leurs enfants qui ont été violés et ont continué d'être vendus comme esclaves. Puis leur esprit nous donnait la force de lever nos voix alors que nous poursuivons leur chemin vers la liberté et l'équité. Thank you. Je vous remercie.
Thank you so much, Shalisa. It's important for us that we start all of our events with an acknowledgement of where we are, the land that we are on, and just paying homage to those who have come before us. This is a community conversation, so we really want to hear what you have to say. We've been so blessed to have such great conversations up until this point, and we want to just keep that conversation going. And so we just want to take a moment to highlight the series that we've been going through over the last couple of weeks. So as I mentioned, it's our Strong Women, Strong Men series. For those of you who weren't able to join us, our first session was on women escaping violence, nowhere to turn. As we all know, we've been dealing with this COVID pandemic almost for a year now, and it has had immeasurable effects on women, children, just people in general who have been dealing with gender-based violence and intimate partner violence. In this session, we were looking at ways that women feel trapped during this time, not able to leave their house, not able to get distance from their abuser in the typical way that they would, and just learning how important it was to find solutions to that, to know what their rights are, to find systems that protect the women, and especially women of color, as they're going into these systems trying to find help. So that was what our first session was about. Our second session was the myth of the superwoman, looking at the concept that in society, oftentimes we are encouraged to not air our dirty laundry, and a lot of people, as a result of that, are dying in silence. So we want to break that cycle of silence, and so that we can get the healing and the help that is needed. And in our most recent session, it was called The Dichotomy of Violence and Faith, which was very popular, and we had some great conversations. We heard from someone from the Christian faith, someone from the Jewish faith, and someone from the Muslim faith. As they analyzed each religion, what they said about violence against women, and how over long periods of time, a lot of times people have tried to skew what is said in these religions to make acts such as this okay. But what we saw is that across the board, violence against women is something that is not tolerated. And we had some great questions, a lot of discussions about this. So we are happy that we were able to talk about these topics so far. And today we just want to continue to keep that conversation going for all of those in our community. So I would like to take this opportunity to introduce to you our panelists who will be joining us today. We really wanted to talk to a diverse group of people, whether it's diverse in age or in life stage, in experience. So we're really looking forward to hearing from them today about what they have to say about this topic. So our first panelist is Emmanuel Melez. He's the Executive Director of the Network of Advancement of Black Communities at York University and the Principal of Amman Counseling. He brings more than 25 years of senior management experience and expertise in settlements and immigration, community health, community development, community peace building, funding, and philanthropy. He's a member of the board of the Center for Social Innovation Institute and chairs the board of Interchange, the international community-based peace-building institute, and the Institute for Change Leaders. He volunteers supporting the community on issues such as intimate partner violence, mental health, seniors, and refugees. So we'd like to welcome you, Emmanuel, today. Our second panelist is Benjamin Sekatawa. He is currently studying chemistry at Laurentian University. He loves the outdoors, reading fantasy and fiction literature, and he is a big motorsports fan. So welcome, Benjamin. Our third panelist is Mahamoud Hassan. He is the managing director at TWO's Technical Solutions, which is a service-based IT organization specializing in cloud solutions, web development, managed IT, and consulting. Mahmoud has a specialized experience in privately held enterprises, building marketing strategies and launching services from concept to rollout and building organizations from the ground up. So we just like to welcome you today, Mahmoud. Our next panelist is Sarah Muboyai. I hope I said that correctly. Sarah cares deeply about issues that are affecting women and Black communities. She is a full-time law student at the University of Ottawa and holds a Bachelor of Art degree in psychology. Welcome, Sarah. And our last panelist is Kamaria Pingi, and she is a Jamaican Canadian who is a single parent of 2 teenagers and the founder and artistic director of Onyxasia African Diaspora Productions, which specializes in Afrocentric fashions, African-inspired storytelling, and West African dance. She is a board member of Parents for Diversity, which is a child and family work and is a child and family worker with the Somali Center for Family Services SNAP program. She is an Ontario College of Teachers certified teacher who holds a BA in psychology from the University of Saskatchewan, a BA in education from the University of Ottawa, and an MA in education from the University of Ottawa as well. So we just like to welcome all of our panelists. As I mentioned, we have a diverse panel at various life stages, and we just really want to hear your thoughts about the topic of family, of relationships, and how that affects the whole the conversation around gender-based violence and intimate partner violence. So to start off, the first question that we have is for those of you who may have teenagers or children, and we just like to ask, based on how you were raised, what are you doing differently than what your parents might have done with you when you were a teenager?
This is Emmanuel. First of all, thank you, Caroline, and the team at Mama Watali. This is such an important organization and such an important issue for our community. So I'm so pleased to be part of this panel today and share my thoughts, but also learn from others. So kudos for what you're doing. I'm, as a parent myself of 2 daughters and a son, and at one time sent to my parents. I find your question really interesting because I came to this country about 27 years ago. And I think obviously there is a shift of culture and environment and context in terms of where I grew and how I grew and how my wife and I have been raising our children. It's a book in itself. I mean, I don't know where to start, to tell you honestly, but if I reflect on things that I've done differently, I stopped repeating this mantra that talking to my children, referring to my own communication and experience with my parents. Like if when they talk to me or to their mom, from a cultural context that perhaps back home growing up might not be acceptable, I would make reference to, hey, if my dad was around and would listen to what you're saying, he would be blah, blah. I stopped doing that. So I've started to learn to listen differently as a parent, but also, realizing that the context is different. Yeah. And I often, when I speak to parents, like we kid ourselves as parents thinking that we're raising our children by ourselves. Society is raising them. Their peers are raising them. The school system is raising them. We talk about the social determinants of health and how education and employment and other things affect, our lives. It's the same thing. There are determinants that affect how our children are growing up in this society. And we need to start recognizing that. And for me, I think that has been, a huge learning curve, because the context is definitely different. And I would say by concluding my remarks that, for me, just like I've always wondered when I first had my first child, that we go to school, to colleges, universities to learn many things. Yeah, we never go to school to earn a degree or a diploma to be parents. It's a lifelong work in progress. Yeah, and I just want to leave that with everybody, because raising children is the number one most important human responsibility that we have. We're bringing someone into the world, and yet we're not ready as parents. It's a job in progress and learning.
That's so true. I think oftentimes we realize as we go through different life stages that as much as we prepare, we can never be ready until we're actually in the situation and we learn on the go. And that's just how it is for parenting and for a lot of other stages of life. Thank you so much for sharing that, Emmanuel. Kamaria, I see that you have your hand up. Would you like to add to that?
I definitely want to agree with Emmanuel on that. We are definitely in a totally different context of parenting today. And I think, as usual, from generation to generation, we can expect that things can be different. However, in my experience raising I have a boy and a girl who are now teenagers. And I think that the difference between the way my parents raised me and the way I'm raising them is allowing my children to have an opinion and allowing them to express it. I think that our parents knew that we had opinions, but didn't always allow us to express it. And I also would have to say that not only do I allow them to express it, but I believe them when they do. And I think that it's different because there's a certain approach. I'm approachable. I feel like they can come to me with anything. And I think those unspoken rules, those don't exist in my parenting experience. For me, there's still respect, definitely. We still respect each other, but it goes both ways. And I think that for me, I allow my children to express themselves, their opinions. I believe them when they say something, and I don't limit them. I think that's the last thing that I'd say that I experienced growing up. And I don't think that it was intentional, but I feel that my parents did have a way of limiting my potential in the way that maybe it was part of society too, what they believed that I could achieve, or would be allowed to achieve. I'm not sure, but I allow my children to tell me what they want and what they want to do and what their dreams and aspirations are, and I nurture that as opposed to pushing my own ideas on what they should do. So I would definitely say that is a difference between how I was raised.
Thank you for sharing that. I think a lot of us here on this call can definitely identify with what you're saying, in that the way that you were raised was very different. A lot of, I know, at least for myself in our culture, it can be very much do what I say, don't question me, don't, almost, they don't say don't think for yourself, but almost it feels that way sometimes. And that can definitely lead to insecurities. It can lead to getting into toxic type relationships, and that's something that I think that we all want to change for the future generations to come. It's important to learn and to grow and to build for every one of our generations so that we can keep getting better and better as a community. If I don't know if any of our other panelists wanted to add to that before we move on. If not, my next question would be for those who are more so in the dating relationships or long-term relationships. I would say, what is your role? Maybe this will be maybe for the men a little bit more. What's your role as a boyfriend or as a partner in your relationship? And what do you think are some of the missing pieces for young adults who are getting into relationships right now? As we've seen this cultural shift, what is it that you think is important for young people to know at this stage of life?
My name is Benjamin. First of all, thank you for this opportunity, Mama Watali, for having me here. I greet you all again. Based on the relationship topic, as a young adult, we tend to have what we call this freedom aspect, in that personally, when I was being raised, I was back home, we are always under our parents. So you kind of build that urge to have the will to just do what you want to do, be it relationship, be it studies, be it sports, all that kind of stuff. And then coming to Canada, like I haven't been so far in my lifetime, I've been exposed to a lot of variants, a lot of things that society brings, religion, different people, parents, families, you name it, like, because Canada is bringing everyone, and that kind of opened the gate of me trying to be free. And with that aspect led to, I want to just go and date who I want to date, not date because of what my parents think was best for me if I stayed home. And now I am in a long-term relationship, and we go through culture shock each time. But life is you have to learn in order to move forward in your lifetime. So what I feel that us as young adults, we don't tend to want to respect the other side, our other partner's way of upbringing. We tend to keep that, have a blind eye to it, and like neglect that side, which kind of brings part of toxicity, which kind of brings the fights, the clashes that people tend to have, similar like on social media, people are just bashing forth over something very small that you could just sit down and have a talk about it, and it's because that urge of trying to be free, it affects, and also the culture shock, it kind of affects people, the dynamic of a relationship. And if we don't want to learn what our partner brings, you will never have a happy relationship. It will always be toxic. And based on what goes on around the world as of now, people, due to the COVID, have had time to really reflect on what happens around them, their environment, and they're adapting and changing. With that coming into the playing field, I feel that us, like a young generation, should at least have respect for each other first as individuals before entering any kind of relationship.
Thank you so much, Benjamin. I think that's really important. The respect piece of it is huge. That's everything. And as you said, especially when you come from different places or different cultures, or even same culture, different family. Everyone was raised slightly differently, and it really feeds into the way that you interact with one another, or if you're planning on getting married, how you think that you're going to interact within the marriage, how you're going to raise children, all of this kind of stuff. It really makes a difference. If I can call on one of the other panelists to give us, some of their thoughts. Mahmoud, what do you think about these roles and relationships?
I'd like to take. I think Benjamin did a good job of covering from, from his lens, his perspective, his experiences. I got married not too long ago, and in our culture, in our religion, when you're getting married, you're getting advice from every single person you come across, right? So some are good, some are bad. I think what I've learned over the years of marriage is, marriage is, any type of relationship is a lot of work. It takes a lot of patience, thoughtfulness, and I like the way you described it, Caroline. It's a partnership. You have to come into it knowing that, sometimes, you're up, they're down, you're down, they're up, and it requires a both parties to kind of always see the best in each other and kind of keep helping each other move forward. So it's very subjective. It's personality based. It's what's happening in your life at that time. I think the one thing that hopefully I can pass on to somebody else that might be going through something I went through a few years back when getting married is, patience is key. Like, I think you have to show patience to each other in moments of difficulty, and even in moments of happiness, and let things kind of, let the strength of your relationship kind of guide you, and really come into it thinking it is a partnership and don't have any preconceived ideas and gender roles.
Thank you so much for sharing with us, Mahmoud. I think what you said is really important in that it's important to have discernment to filter out the things that are helpful pieces of information and things that may just be a preference that somebody is giving to you. Especially when you first start your relationship, everyone's very excited to give you all of their, tips and tricks, and they may work. They definitely may work, but it takes a while to work through it, figure out what works for you and your partner, and then move forward in that way. Emmanuel or Sarah or Kamaria, do you have any thing that you want to add to that?
I would like to give this perspective of being a single parent and having a relationship that unfortunately didn't work out. I've been single for 15 years now, and it's made something that's made me stronger. However, I also have some insight about, I think that relationships is also about hindsight and being able to look back and reassess and say, okay, what would I have done differently? And coming from that perspective, I would say that I believe that relationships are also about sacrifice. And in that sense, if you don't have both partners willing to sacrifice, then it's not going to work. Because I think that any kind of relationship, whether that be a business relationship, whether that be a love relationship, whether that be a friendship, both parties have to be willing to sacrifice something to make it work. Because otherwise, what's the opposite of sacrifice? The opposite of sacrifice is selfishness, is what it is. And so therefore, nothing can thrive on selfishness, nothing. And so for me, I would say that anyone going into any type of relationship, it's about what are you willing to sacrifice and what are you not willing to sacrifice? And because if not, then problems are going to arise. What I've experienced is that when one party is sacrificing more, and feels like they're sacrificing more, that's when things are off balance. And that's when things, I feel, one party's going to feel taken advantage of. One party's going to feel tired. One party is going to feel that they're not loved. They're not appreciated. So I think that if I could interject and contribute anything about relationships and making them balanced and work, I would have to advise that you have to consider what am I willing to sacrifice going into it, because the other person is going to count on that and need that from you.
If I can just jump in, Caroline, I think I have a Brazilian friend of mine, Mara Cristina, who many moons ago when we were doing our graduate studies, and she knew closely my wife. There was a moment I always remember in the discussions, like, when she point blank asked me, like, beyond the love, what is there that you have for Leah, my wife? And I think I recollect that moment only to say that, you cannot ignore other things that are happening around the relationship. Yeah. As young people growing up, there are many decisions that you make in your lives about education, about, your financial security. There are a number of trajectories in your life beyond the relationship that you have to make decisions. And some of them, you start making them together with your partner. And wherever you are, I think, earlier on, I think the point was made by Benjamin that you need to actually have a sense of respect for yourself. You can give if you have. And I think it's very important that you build the have in you, yeah? That relationship is a complementary great things in your life, but should not come at the expense of some of the basic fundamentals that you need to have in place in your life as a young person growing up, yeah? Because I think there are moments, all of us, that we really get engulfed in the beautiful emotions of love and relationship. I think with time, we start realizing that, there are some good aspects of friendship in the relationship that we have with the person that we love, and we are in relationship that are also worth thinking about, because those types of attributes actually last your lifetime, or actually make your relationship strong. So I wanted to bring into that picture a sense of making sure that the things that are happening around you as an individual person are taken care. If they are, then actually you're in a position to contribute more and get more out of the relationship.
Absolutely. I think that, like you said, it's so important that what you don't have, you can't therefore give. So it's important for people to remember before just, jumping into a relationship based off of affection or anything else, to really think, am I ready? To sacrifice, as you were saying, for this person, to give up certain things, to make compromises. And of course, it's not to the extreme that it becomes toxic. Like you said, it has to be done in a way that is correct, in a way that you have still self-respect for your own person. But it's important that we consider these factors before jumping into relationships. Sarah, did you have anything to add, just generally, about what young people can be looking for when it comes to getting into relationships, or what they should be bringing to a relationship?
I loved what everybody had to add about relationships. I thought it was really, really important, and especially the emphasis that was put on respect, and not only respect for the other, but also self-respect. I think that respecting others is also a way of respecting yourself. And I think what I would have liked to hear a bit more of is your thoughts on communication, because I think that friendships and relationships is a good way to kind of test and sharpen your communication skills. And so I don't know if anyone would have anything insightful to add on that.
I can say just quickly for myself that just like Mahmoud, I'm recently married, and communication is so key. Just getting to know each other, getting to understand how to speak to each other in a way that your spouse will feel loved and understood is so important. I don't know if either any of you have anything you want to add to that.
Communication is always good, and you always want to talk about, I previously said, about every little, even just the smallest of things, because it's those small details that, if missed, will trigger something as something bad in the end. So as people enter a relationship, well, I call it kind of like the honeymoon phase, where when you start with someone, like when you decide to enter a relationship with someone, you're all extremely happy. Everyone is enjoying, getting to know you, go out and do all these kind of activities and outings. Then it starts to die down, and then you get comfortable. When you get comfortable, I feel that's when a person's true colors come out. Because with that, and if someone has not been the kind of person who can communicate easily, he or she may revert back to that kind of type of person they were before, and that kind of brings like the fights and toxicity and whatnot, So yes, communication is key. And as someone who likes to always want to talk about anything, it's something I learned with time. I wasn't the best, but thank the heavens that I learned that. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Benjamin. And Mahmoud, and then we have Kamari as well.
I don't want to beat it over the head. I think Benjamin is just like he said it. I wanted to point out, sometimes in moments of friction, or whatever the case is, sometimes just kind of taking a few hours to collect your thoughts, and not communicating right away is quite helpful. Always kind of going with your first thoughts, or the first thing that you want to communicate. Sometimes it just exacerbates situations, or you're not presenting the best version of what you want to convey, that message that you want to deliver, whether it's good or bad. So sometimes having a filtering, like if it's something that is, if we're not seeing eye to eye on something, maybe I take a few hours, I collect my thoughts, and then communicate a little more effectively where I stand on a subject matter. So I'm, you know, we're human beings. We're always learning. You know, it's something that I personally always struggle with, and sometimes I get it right, sometimes I don't. But I know when I'm able to kind of step back from a situation and think about it, whether it's, you know, in my marriage or in a workspace or with a friend, I'm able to always kind of reach my, you know, that middle ground with that individual a lot faster, because we're able to kind of be a little more thoughtful in what we want to convey.
Absolutely. Perspective is very, very important in any relationship that you're in. And Kamaria, you had something to say.
Those are wonderful points to make. Definitely taking a break and, you know, taking some time to kind of regroup and collect your thought is so, so important. How many times have we blurted out things that we have to apologize for later? You know, is definitely something you don't want to do. But I also think that maybe during that time when you're collecting your thoughts, what exactly are you trying to understand? I think what you're trying to understand, for me anyway, is how do I really feel about this? And I think that a part of the communication piece is emotional intelligence as well. I think that you need to understand, you know, and be able to communicate and relay what is really going on inside of your head, you know, because sometimes it's not about the other person. Sometimes it's about you. And I think that being honest with yourself about how you really feel and being honest about your emotions, being honest about, because it's so easy to overlook that and pretend, or overlook that and think about the other person only, because that's part of self-care too, right? Is that you have to be honest with how you're feeling and what you want and what you want to see. And I think that you know, having a sense of valuing that feeling, valuing that emotional part of you, I think is important too. It's good to stick to the facts. I think that's important too. But I think that there's a lot of us running around not really being, you know, cluing into that emotional piece of a part of ourselves and being able to relay that and communicate that emotional part of ourselves, because that's what a relationship is. A relationship really is, you know, about our emotions and how we're feeling about, you know, the situation, about the other person, and not being in tune with that, I think, can also cause some difficulties.
I would agree with that wholeheartedly. I think it's easy when we think about self-care to think about the physical and how we can take care of, you know, our bodies, or, you know, get it shape, whatever it is. But sometimes we're very quick to neglect the emotional, the mental part of taking care of ourselves. And self-care is not just about taking care of yourself, but also taking care of yourself so that you can also take care of others. Like you were saying, that it's so important to be able to fully understand how you're feeling, so that you can then communicate that in a way that is not overly, you know, emotionally charged. And like Mahmoud was saying, taking the time, because it's too important to not take the time, right? You want to be able to do this thing, you know, to the best of your ability. We're not perfect, but to be able to communicate in a way that is healthy, that promotes, you know, good examples to the people around us, to our kids, to maybe even if we're, you know, still living with parents, to our parents, to those around us, so that we can, you know, be a beacon of light in a world that is so dark. So if we can just switching topics just a little bit, something that we had spoken about before, we want to talk about gender roles, because this is something that is very big when it comes to relationships, or things that we have seen as we're growing up, what is expected of men, what's expected of women. And I would like to just ask our panelists, how do you see gender roles, and what was your influence? Like, what caused you to see it in that way?
The previous discussion around communication is also related to this. I think the way that we manifest the roles that we're playing is by communicating, and also by how we behave and relate to one another. I think earlier in my introduction, I mentioned that I grew up and came from a different context and culture before coming to Canada. And I think in my many years of doing volunteer work around supporting folks around intimate partner violence, not surprisingly, communication challenge and issues is at the center of some of these challenges. And most of it, like, you know, for a lot of folks that come to Canada from different cultures and contexts, the challenge of settlement, the challenge of living in a new country, finding proper employment, housing, and many other things. The challenges, if they are not resolved there, they get in the way of the relationship. And I think what happens is this thing called role reversal, where a lot of us who come from cultures where men are expected to provide, men are not expected to be in the kitchen to cook and provide for food. Men are supposed to fit into certain roles. There's such a mix up of that role when we come to this country that it takes some adjustments to learn and really play these new roles. That it's okay to go out and shop and cook and provide. That it's okay actually to change the diapers of your babies. To kind of play some of the roles that back home were identified are roles attached to women. And I think the biggest challenge that we have here is we were talking earlier on about relationship and among young adults and folks growing in community. My experience actually is in families where there are a lot of newcomer parents. There's a lot of support that needs to be brought and given to parents on how to actually lead by example and adjust some of these roles. So for me, it was different because I was raised by a parent in a large family where I was taught and then by experience shown that I had to respect my sisters. I almost treat my sisters as little princesses. And so my son and my two daughters, I've always tried to mimic that. It has not always been successful, but I think I've always, tried to raise my children by demonstrating that my daughters can actually do what my son can do, And many years ago, for almost 20 years ago, actually, I ran as a volunteer a project in the community focusing strictly on boys to men. And what are some of the things that we need to do to disrupt actually this hierarchical and patriarchal type of roles that we bring to this country and inadvertently pass to the children that we're raising.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's important to look at the effects of, our experiences and also the generational cycles that are going on within communities, within organizations. And I know that you work with a lot of people who have immigrated to Canada and have those various challenges. And I think it's great that they have the support, to be able to think outside of just what they have learned or what they have seen, to look for those good examples. I think somebody else had their hand up at one point. Was there anybody else who wanted to share on this idea of gender roles and the influence?
I think that in my experience, it's best to look at gender roles as, I guess you could say, as teamwork. I think that, it's very easy to just divide things, based on a gender role. But then what if you question that and disrupt that and say, we're a team and we're going to work together and divide things, based on what's going to work best for our household. I think that we have to be innovative and we have to look at our individual homes, separate from what happened back home or what even society even dictates right now. I think that it's promising because we are now seeing, on social media, Instagram. I love Instagram right now because I love, my favorite pages are, the Black fathers pages, and the Black daddies clubs. And I just love it because I didn't see those kind of things growing up. It's just like, wow, men are really starting to, and I just love this hashtag girl dad, hashtag that is just so popular right now. It's like, yes, you just want to jump for joy because why? Because I'm realizing that that just is going to help that household, whatever household that father is a part of. He is doing he's making immense impacts in that household because he's willing to take on something, that's normally characterized, as a gender role for women. So what that is doing is it's balancing things in the household, and you're actually going to go further. What that mother can do now with her hands free and her mind sane, is she can accomplish so much more, because that father is willing to take on a little bit more of what she would only be classified as having to do. So I kind of see it as teamwork, something that you do together. There shouldn't be this this definite absolute gender role. You only do this and I only do that. Like, what, I take out the garbage. Does that like, come on, like, does that really matter who takes out the garbage? Really? Does it really matter who changes the diaper, or the fact that the child is comfortable and clean? And, like, really, I think, yes, this is a good point as well. Communication can very well play a very good role there in setting priorities. What is a priority for our family, this particular household? And then you decide after that, based on those priorities, what is best for you to do as a couple and as a family and as a team.
Thank you so much. I love that idea of teamwork, and I also love those Instagram pages, seeing all the dads, wearing the baby carrier on the front and just living life, enjoying life with their kids, right? It's a family. We are to be doing these things together, making these decisions as a unit. And unity is very important in all of those decisions. Who have we not heard from yet? Mahmoud, maybe we can get some insight from you as well.
Emmanuel and Kamaria said it very nicely. I just like to add that, I was raised by a single mother. My father passed away, shortly after I was born. But I had an older brother, that was my mentor, my role model. I also had a sister that was really tough on me. She didn't let me get away with anything. I did more cleaning and stuff like that, work around the house, because my mom had to work and kind of put food on the table. So it was just her, me, and my other sister, and I was the youngest. So they abused me. But now I'm super appreciative of that time in our lives, because I have what I call, life skills. I can take care of myself. I can be a partner to somebody else. And I think that's crucial. I think the way I frame it in my mind is, these are things that are going to help me as an adult, whether it's, how to clean a home, how to change things around the house. These are life skills. And I kind of use that as my motivation for taking on more or learning more.
Absolutely. I think what you said about life skills is so important, and I think sometimes it's just a switch of perspective that people need, because sometimes if you're in that frame of mind that, oh, I don't want to do this because this is more of something a woman might do, or as a woman this is a man's thing to do. No, it's great for all of us to get the life skills that we need, whether it's doing something that you may have never done, like for some people, if they've never cooked a meal or never changed the oil in the car, right? These are things that as humans we all need to learn how to do, and that we learn so that we can then teach others, right? So I think that's something that's very important for us to do. Benjamin or Sarah, if you had anything to add.
Kamara made a very strong point in the emphasis on team, that you do everything together. there's no I in team. And the thing is like, as time goes on, we develop certain things that come from around us. We adapt to our environment. And with that adaptation, it changes us. With that change, we see things more clearly. Like how we go through education, we go through work, we move up in the world. So just like a relationship, and also based on gender roles, there's no shame in being a girl, that like being a child, like being a father, posting it and showing like, I love my child, this is my child, like I feel that some young people are afraid, and they feel kind of sense of shame to show that they think that because ladies are like when they're supposed to take care of the children, not the men, and that's something that we should try and educate, that it's not like that. You are in the relationship with your partner. It's your family, it's your household. You are in this together. You're not alone. You do what's best for you first. You as the couple, you as in your marriage, you as being in a relationship. You guys come first, So it's whatever stays in your household stays in your household. As long as you are a team and you're both happy, then that's how I feel that we get to learn as we grow up in that kind of household, of how to respect other genders and also the roles as well, if I may say. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that, Benjamin. Before we move on, is there anything else from any of our other panelists that they want to share?
If you go on social media, there are so many positive groups, stories, and kind of things about men and their children, more precisely Black men and their daughters or sons and whatnot. There's always been a negative stereotype, perpetuated in the Black community. But now that, social media is kind of capturing every moment of our lives, you're some of the good that is in our, community, some of the positives that we can all learn from are also being captured and brought to the forefront of conversation. So I think that was a good point by Kamaria. Like we see that every day now, and it's probably been like that for a long time. It's just now it's being captured, and it's in our faces. We can't avoid it.
That's very true. And it's nice that oftentimes the media likes to put forth all of the bad news, the things that are going wrong in the world. But I like the fact that our culture is starting at least to shift towards, you know what, let's share some good news. Let's share some encouragement. Let's show people how we can do things differently, how we can be better than we were before. And that's really what we need to be hearing right now. I just want to quickly encourage everyone, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat so that we can ask them to our panelists and keep this conversation going. Emmanuel, I think you had something that you want to add on.
The traditional sense of a family that we know is not the only one. We should be open to looking at different types of families. I mean, most of my volunteer work is with African and newcomer communities, and I think there are multi-generational households where the dynamic is such that whatever influences gender roles also is influenced by the presence of grandfathers and grandmothers in the household, and a strong grounding in cultural practices and norms and values. And I remember, just make you all laugh, I remember that many years ago when my children are young adults now, but when they were born, I ran into a mother. I was visiting with a friend, and his mother, who was visiting from back home, she said to me, I think this was when my second child was about to be born. So my son, I hear that men here in this country think that they have become modern and civilized. They go into the delivery rooms to when their wives are delivering. So please don't go there and wait outside and so on. And I laugh at because to think that men here in Canada from back home, they will go into the hospital room and be there when their children are born, which was such a delight for me to experience firsthand, is unthinkable in the context and culture that I came from. Yeah. So I think we need to be able to think about how actually, if you start flow charting, what are some of the dynamics and reasons that lead to gender-based violence? You cannot minimize the influence of the confusion and reversals around roles that people are caught up because of those cultural differences and contexts.
Thank you for sharing that. It's good to have the perspective that you have, especially having been able to work with so many families in a variety of communities, to see really what the roots are of issues in the home or issues in relationships, and being able to deal with that in a good and encouraging way. So if any of our panelists have anything else to share, please feel free to go ahead. If not, we would like to get into our question and answer period for all of our participants. Like I said, feel free to put your questions or comments in the chat. If there's anything that you want to add to this conversation. I know people have a lot of different perspectives, ideas, experiences, so please feel free to put those in the chat and we will ask them. So we do have a question here. So our first question is, how can we help our children to be self-motivated, especially when they are now teenagers?
I have teenagers. I have a 19-year-old boy and an 18-year-old girl. And so I'm assuming that you mean self-motivated, for career or for education. I'm not quite sure. But I can maybe speak to first the topic of relationships first. When it comes to, being, motivated to maybe do the right thing, or look at gender roles, or, be honest about their emotional intelligence, things like that. I think that we need to, first of all, definitely, be open and approachable in terms of communication. But I also think that you have to lead by example. And I think that when we ask our young people to do things and then we don't do it, or they see something else happening in the home, it's very hard to bring that expectation to them realistically and expect to see them, comply. And so I would say that, whether you want them to do better in their education, whether you want them to, to be respectful, when they talk to you, etc. I really believe that it comes from doing it yourself as a parent and showing them how to do it. Because I think that definitely young people are a product of their environment many times, not always. Sometimes they can just be, motivated to change, if they come from a less than positive environment. But I think that for the most part, young people learn what they see. And so if you want them to be motivated to do chores, you need to set an example and do the chores. You need to set an example and they need to see you doing it. If it is to be motivated to read every day, they need to see you reading every day. So I would say don't ask your young people to do anything that you wouldn't do yourself. That would be my advice.
That's really important. And we just got some clarification on the question. They said education to be specific. So if anybody has anything specifically about education or just also in general, this is all great information.
One time I had teenagers. I think for me, and now that the focus is on education, it's important that we don't create an unnecessary expectation that molds children or your teenagers to move in a certain direction. Let alone in a teenage year, a lot of young adults that get into colleges universities, within one semester, they start thinking about, okay, maybe I have other things to do instead of pursuing something. For the longest in my life growing up, I always wanted to be a medical doctor. And when the moment I spent a couple of weeks after the first year at the university in pre-med, I totally lost interest. And then I felt so bad because for many years, I had that desire and sense inside myself, and then completely veered into another level, pathway to education. So I think we need to give permission to our children to be who they want to be. I've always said to my kids when they were growing up that they cannot live their lives through my glory, and I cannot live my life through their glory. That the most important thing for them is to be decent people first. And I think in terms of really pursuing what they need to be exposed and try things before they land somewhere. So I think a lot of newcomer parents, and I go back to that because I came here, even though my children were born here as a newcomer myself, we put a lot of expectation on our growing children. We want them to be doctors. We want them to be engineers, lawyers, all these professions. Like, what's important for me is like you want them to first and foremost to be decent citizens, yeah. And I think respecting others, having those things that Mahmoud was talking earlier on in terms of life skills, yeah. And by exposing them to different situations that are fun, entertaining, they will start actually developing that sense of purpose in their life that will carry them for many years. So as parents, I think we have lived our lives. That's what I strongly believe. We were teenagers. We were, young adults. We went to education ourselves. We did what we wanted to do in life. It's totally crazy as parents for us to expect our children to grow up and mold in the way that we expect. I think we need to leave the plane open for them and encourage them from behind.
That's a great point. I think it's so important. It's easy, I think, as parents to try to live vicariously through our children, or because of any missteps or mistakes that we've made already, we want to try to protect them from everything. And of course, it comes from a great place, but also we need to allow our children to make the mistakes that they're going to make, and learn from them too, because that's how they're going to grow and develop, to be inspired to do the things that they want to do and that they were made to do. So thank you both for your input on that. I had another question. So for Sarah, just for you, because I know you're a student right now, and being around a lot of students as much as you can during COVID, what do you find is helpful for students to be motivated when they're in university?
Just actually to touch on the previous question as well, I still remember kind of, when I was a teenager and thinking about what I'm going to do in university, there's kind of this switch between like doing things because mom and dad said so to doing something that's really for yourself and for your future. And I think that it can help to empower us a little bit, so that we realize that, if you don't work hard in school, no one else is going to do it for you, and you have to deal with those consequences on your own. And so I think kind of gaining that understanding is really important in terms of being motivated. Being involved in the community is also really helpful. Like, I did a lot of volunteering, and I spoke with people that are like older than me and from just different demographics. That I think is really important. Kind of just like stepping into the real world instead of just, kind of staying in your bubble, I think is something that can help.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Sarah. So we do have another question here from someone in our audience. So it says, an increasing number of continental Africans are dating and marrying Caribbean or North American born Black people. So how do they navigate those cultural differences?
One thing I want to mention before is that one of the things when my children were growing up, I listened a lot and was always alert to their curiosities, and played games with them, especially when we were traveling, depending on their curiosities. My son loved maps. He's now an urban planner. He could travel the world before he even started traveling the world, and he knew all of the nooks and crannies of the Caribbean, and I mean, wherever he went before he actually did it. So that's sort of a little bit of a nugget. But my children are very, very, very multiracial. Plus, one of the things, my son and my daughter-in-law from two different cultures, like completely. She's of South Asian descent, Ismaili Muslim. My son is learning Urdu and Swahili because home is now Kenya for her parents, via Tanzania. And part of the culture for my son was Pakistani, Bangladeshi. Yeah. And he loves Indian food, like literally. So he's at home. I could never get him to eat with a knife and fork. He hated knives and forks. So he just loves, he had to relearn how to, in the corporate world he's in, the knife and fork thing. So, and it's not that I didn't try teaching. So that it's interesting to watch them navigate both the religion and the lifestyle of the cultures, and both of them were born here. So the Caribbean piece of Trinidad parents, and which one was really Israeli multiracial, which is myself, and the pure South Asian piece of African descent of my daughter-in-law's parents all comes out, and they do the Christian thing. When we're there, we do both the Christian thing and the Ismaili prayers, and we do it at Christmas time. She speaks in Arabic. I tried correcting my 3-year-old granddaughter before COVID breakdown, and realized that, and was corrected by my daughter-in-law, that what she was saying was actually Swahili, Kuchi, because then they have that dialect with her parents, and she communicates with her parents in that language, and so both my grandchildren are learning that, and it's all natural. So they're getting everything. Literally, it's fascinating to watch. And my son is really comfortable in the kitchen because he had to be. And to the point where I was visiting him one day, and I said, I'll come and I'll walk. I called him to meet me at the train station. And he says, Mom, can you wait? I'm changing the diaper. I'm changing Alina's diaper. Oh, sure, no problem. So I think that depending on their flexibility, depending on the character of the individual and how comfortable they feel in their roles. It's not about roles, it's about sharing, and you've all talked about that, being in a team. Whoever gets home first starts dinner, and that kind of thing, and that makes a difference. So, and that's what I'm noticing about the two of them.
I think that's such a great example of two very different cultures coming together and working together to understand each other's cultures, their backgrounds, their differences, and really coming together as a family and as a team in that.
Yeah.
I think, Emmanuel, you want to share something as well.
Indeed, I think, and thanks, Anne, for bringing that personal experience. And I think this morning I was talking to someone in the community, a friend of mine from Jamaica, about the need for us to intentionally actually bridge within the Black family. You know, when we talk about continental Africans and the Caribbean, we're all people of African descent, but there are cultural nuances and textures that are different. Yeah. And I think when someone marries into a different culture, even within the Black family, it's marrying into a community, not necessarily just a person. And that's why Anne's example of those cultural practices and some things that are done intentionally to acknowledge and learn and embrace the other is critically important. So I think what's not happening, and that perhaps is happening at a lesser degree, is this responsibility that all of us have as community leaders to really nurture that space where our children growing up, they need to be able to have that kind of 30,000 feet ideation and knowledge of the people of African descent. Like when we talk about Black, it's not uncommon you run into brothers and sisters in the continental African community or in the Caribbean identifying themselves different than being Black. Yeah? There is a very strong discussion about should we call ourselves Black or should we call ourselves African Canadians? Yeah, and sometimes those views are entrenched. The reasons I have always focused in terms of raising my kids to be decent people first. Whatever you're marrying into, the most important thing for me is you have to have a relationship of respect with the other. Yeah, and when you have that relationship of respect with the other, you extend that to the family of the other, to the community of the other. Yeah, and I think we need to do better as within the larger Black family to actually identify those values that are African in nature, that apply to all of us, and try to see how we can use those to really create an environment where it's not difficult for our children growing up to navigate these waters, as was asked by Sarah.
I think it's so important to find what we have in common as opposed to finding things to divide us. I think if we look for things to divide us, we can find things all day. But it's more important as a community to come together, to work together, and be able to live together in harmony. I know that personally for myself, I have a lot of mixture in my family. For example, my husband, his father is from Benin, his mother's from Guyana, my mom's from Guyana, my dad's from Barbados. So there are some cultures that are very similar, but there are some cultures that are very different. And when we got married, it was great because my father-in-law, we sat down and we talked about a lot of, his culture, and he's familiar with my culture, and he told me about some marital traditions that they had in his culture and things that he found important that he wanted to do, and we were really able to come together as a family and to do the things that were important to both of us, and that helped to facilitate such a good relationship. Had we not sat down and had that conversation, maybe there would have been, a little bit of, frustration in there that we didn't even realize. So I think, Emmanuel, like you said, that's so pivotal, so important. Mahmoud, did you have something that you want to add to that as well?
Our family is pretty homogenous at this time, but I think it doesn't matter. I think Emmanuel said it best. Decent people, you're always going to marry into another family, and how you approach that, the respect that you give the other side is what's the most important. Embracing other cultures, learning and educating yourself is a way to kind of bridge these differences between us. And you never know, like you might learn and appreciate something that you might have never come across, if not, for the marriage or that relationship that you have.
For Sarah or Kamaria or Benjamin, do you have anything that you want to add to that, P?
I think that if you're interested in the person that you're marrying, then you're interested in all of them, not just one piece of them. They come, with background, with package, with a history. And so to deny this part of them is do you really love that person? You love them as a whole, and so that means their history, their family, their culture, and everyone has a part of their history that may not be as pleasant. So it's about loving that part of them too. If that history is not as pleasant, you take the best and you move on. I think that coming together, we have to realize that it's an amalgamation of two different lives, and then going forward and giving birth to something new. So your children are going to take the best of the both of you, and hopefully move forward with that and create something beautiful. And so I think that we really need to keep in mind that you love the whole person, and not just parts of them that they come as with a history, and that's who they are.
I really like what you said about the fact that when you accept both parts of who the people are, then their children can go on to learn more about their backgrounds, their cultures, to appreciate that, and you're making something new and beautiful. And I think we all need to realize that as people, as Emmanuel was saying, you want your children to be good citizens, to be people who are able to connect with others, to get along with people from other backgrounds, cultures, religions, whatever it might be. And in that way, we can have good and healthy relationships as we go forward. So if nobody else has anything else to add, I just want to thank all of our panelists for this great conversation. There's so much that can be said on these topics, but the little bit that we were able to hear today was so encouraging and so inspiring. For that, we just want to remind you to follow us on social media. You can find us on Facebook, on Instagram, on YouTube, and on Twitter. So whatever I think LinkedIn as well. So whatever you have, please find us, follow us, share the word about the work that we're doing here. We definitely want to be able to reach as many people as possible to continue to bring that hope, that light, that encouragement to our community. You can also contact us at our mailing address or at our email. You can also go on our website to see more information about Mama Watali, about the projects that are going on and the upcoming events as well. We also just want to give a special thank you to our funders. So the Government of Canada, through Employment and Social Development Canada funding, administered through the Canadian Red Cross. We want to give a big thank you to them, because without them, we could not do the things that we are doing right now. So thank you all so much for joining us. As I said, we look forward to seeing you all again very soon at our next event. We hope that you have a great weekend and that you stay blessed. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thank you. This is great.
Thank you so much.
Really well done.